7 o'clock, so I'd like to call our meeting to order. Please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Martha, would you please call roll?
Davis. Here. Flora.
Here.
Inman. Here. Crane.
Here.
Quinn.
Here.
Rothrock.
Here.
Schlossmacher.
Here.
Thomas.
Here.
Thank you.
All right, before we get started this evening, I'd like to welcome everybody to our meeting. There will be opportunities for the members of the public to address the council if they so choose. If you are here to speak on a specific agenda item this evening, please wait until that agenda item comes up and raise your hand so I can recognize you to participate. If you're not here on a specific agenda item and you'd like to address the council, there is an appropriate spot. It's agenda item number 5 where you can come forward and make your comments. We do have a revised agenda for this evening's meeting. Item 9A has been removed, and I would entertain a motion to approve our revised agenda.
Mayor, I move that the City Council approve the revised agenda as printed.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on this motion? Seeing none, please call roll.
Schlossmacher.
Aye.
Thomas.
Aye.
Quinn.
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
Rothrock.
Aye.
Inman.
Aye.
Crane.
Aye.
Flora.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, agenda item number 1 is a public hearing, and tonight we do have a public hearing on the Roeland Court Townhomes Community Improvement District, their proposed assessments. I will open the public hearing and ask Ms. Smith to provide us some information on this item, please.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. As you know, in April of this year, we established the Roeland Court Townhome Community Improvement District, working in partnership with the Roeland Court Townhomes Association following the subsidence in their parking lot back in August of 2017. We were looking for a solution that would allow for us to work collaboratively to make repairs both to the public creek channel and the private property, being their parking and common areas. The CID, although we typically think of a community improvement district as being exercised for its sales tax, the sales tax component does include the opportunity for a special assessment. And so the CID was established with the goal of allowing for each of the 20 townhomes to be able to contribute a maximum annual assessment that was established via the petition to be able to pay for those improvements on the private property over the 22-year life of the community improvement district. So one of the steps in required statutorily as a part of the special assessment process is to hold a public hearing to essentially certify the maximum amount of the annual assessment. The certification of that does trigger a protest period, and we want to do that prior to construction so that we know of any objections before we get into actually constructing the project. So that's why this step is being taken for, this is being brought forward at this time. So the amount of the proposed maximum assessment over that 22-year life of the CID per property is $20,040, and that was the amount that was established in the CID petition, the CID district that was established in April. And so this would be the opportunity for any property owners. Notice of the public hearing was published in the legal record, and notices were mailed to all of the property owners in the Roeland Court Townhomes CID district. So this would be the opportunity if anyone wanted to come speak in favor or against the establishment and certification of the special assessments.
All right, thank you. I would now entertain comments from the public. Is there anyone from the public that wants to speak on this issue? Please come forward. Hearing none, the public hearing on the Roeland Court Townhomes Community Improvement District proposed assessments is closed. The council will consider this item, certifying these assessments under our Finance and Administration Committee later this evening. Moving on to item number 2, special presentation. Tonight we have our 2020 Community Budget Dialogue. The Council of Staff have been working to prepare a budget for the last few months, and this budget provides the highest level of service with the resources available to address the priorities of our community. Ms. Smith and members of the leadership team will provide an overview of the 2020 budget, and then there'll be an opportunity for questions and comments.
Thank you, Mayor. Last year, I think we did the community dialogue in connection with a committee meeting. And we had one attendee, and so we moved it to a council meeting night. And a year ago, when we thought that sounded like a great idea, we didn't realize what a full agenda we might have a year later. So I might, with the council's permission, is there anyone here who's specifically interested in the community dialogue on the 2020 budget, who hasn't heard it at a previous committee meeting? Are you interested in hearing it again? We can either give you the Cliff Notes version, I can do it under my report, or we can make it available online, and I can run through kind of the other opportunities where we've talked about the budget and refer the public back to those documents, which are all available.
I recommend we do the Cliff Notes.
The Cliff Notes. All right.
And one of the things I've asked Laura is, we have talked about this repeatedly at multiple meetings, and as part of her presentation, let us know when those meetings occurred, what documents were sent out. So if anybody is interested, they can certainly look at those meetings, watch them online, or they can look through the documents so they know that information is available.
Okay, so we will give you the Cliff Notes version. So our 2020 budget, as you know, we start our budgeting process usually in April of each year. We have to have our budget certified to the county by August. We have been through a series of meetings, and I'll recap all of those at the end as we go over the remaining steps. So tonight we'll give you a very quick overview of the 2020 budget, some highlights from the general fund, and our 2020 to 2024 capital improvement program, and then the opportunities for additional public input. So in the presentation, which will be posted online and is in front of you this evening, just got some information on the council, mayor and council, an organizational chart for the city that shows how we're structured by department. Why do we budget? It's required by state statute. As the mayor mentioned, it really identifies our community priorities and what revenues and expense mix is going to be necessary to support both our ongoing operational service delivery and our infrastructure needs. And it is a tool to communicate those programs and objectives to the public. In our 2020 budget, we budget citywide across 16 different funds, the largest of which is the general fund, our operating fund, several funds which support our 5-year capital improvement program, and then a variety of other funds that are either legally or from just a good sort of fiduciary responsibility position we budget and track separately. For 2020, our overall estimated revenues across those 16 funds is $21.84 million, and our overall estimated expenses is $26.89. That is, expenses do exceed revenues. That's because we expect to draw down on fund balances that have been built up, particularly for some of our larger capital projects that we expect to undertake. And at this point, no tax or fee increases have been proposed in the 2020 budget. We've talked on several occasions about just the trends in our assessed valuation. We did see some incremental growth. 2014 to 2016, we've seen some pretty significant increases in assessed valuation in our community, as did most of the other communities in Johnson County. But that was really a recovery from a period of declining assessed values from about 2008 to 2013. So this year we are beginning to see a slowing in that growth in assessed valuation. Our 2019 growth is estimated to be about 2%. We will be able to take advantage of all of that growth in assessed valuation under the property tax lid, and so we anticipate maintaining the same mill levy as we had in the 2019 budget. 2020 budget general fund revenues, as I mentioned, the general fund is our operating fund. All of the department's expenses and services are provided out of the general fund. For 2020, revenues in the general fund total about $13.49 million. Property tax accounts for about 21% of that. Of that 21%, though, 7 mils of that is transferred for street maintenance. The council made that decision back in the 2015 budget cycle, and that is transferred to the Capital Improvement Fund to support our street maintenance program. Sales and use taxes compromise, and these are sales and use taxes exclusively under the city's control, about 27% of our budget, and intergovernmental revenue, which includes sales taxes collected or certified by others, such as the county, accounts for about 12% of our revenue. Parks and Recreation revenues at about 15%, fines and fees 9%, franchise fees 8%, and then just a general kind of other miscellaneous category. 2020 general fund revenues are expected to increase by about 2% over our 2019 revenues. On the expense side, our expenses total $13.59 million. When we exclude transfers to other funds, our total expenses are actually $12.5 million estimated in 2020. Public safety accounts for about 38% of that, Parks and Recreation 23%, Public Works 26%, and administration 13%. Our projected ending fund balance December 31 of 2020 is expected to be about $4.7 million, or 35% of our annual revenues. This does exceed the council's current fund balance policy in the general fund of 25%, with about almost $1.2 million in excess over that 25% fund balance policy. When we look at the next slide in the presentation, we break down the general fund expenses by character into our broad categories, the largest of which is personnel. Generally accounts for somewhere between 65 and 68% of the general fund budget. It takes people to deliver the services that we do. So you see an increase in 2020. The red bar is 2020 proposed. The blue bar is 2019 estimated. You can see that increase. We are recommending converting 2 overhire positions in the police department to full-time and adding a planner's position. But that gap is widened also by the fact that we had several position vacancies throughout the course of 2019. So the part of that is a savings over, had we been fully staffed, that difference in that personnel bar would have been smaller. Contractual expenses are those things that we purchase from others, and everything from utilities to vehicle maintenance, to any engineering services, legal services, all of those kinds of things. You'll actually see a slight decrease anticipated in the contractual services category. Commodities are actual hard goods, salt, sand, fuel, parts, those kinds of things that we purchase, and you'll see a slight increase, really driven just by inflation. Capital outlay, you probably see the biggest difference between the 2020 and the 2019 budgets. Part of that is because we are shifting about $300,000 of expense in equipment purchased for the Public Works Department to our Equipment Reserve and Replacement Fund, which we established several years ago in order to help sort of balance the peaks and valleys in the general fund. Debt service remains relatively the same. We're paying debt service in the general fund is what we're paying about $80,000 a year when we acquired our streetlight system from KCP&L, and then the lease payments that we make on our police frontline patrol vehicles are also included in the debt service category. And then transfers out include, as I mentioned, that transfer for street maintenance to the Capital Improvement Fund, a transfer to the solid waste utility fund to help support the residential solid waste collection contract. So overall, the general fund expenses are actually estimated to decrease by about 1% over 2019 estimates. When we look at the next slide, general fund balance, I did want to just highlight that. That's been a goal of the council's. We had a specific drawdown about 9 years ago in order to restructure some debt, and it has been our goal, and we have been on a march to try to rebuild that. And as you can see, for the last several years, we've attained that and exceeded that fund balance goal. And really, your fund balance is designed to mitigate your shortfalls and unanticipated expenditures. You have to set a target that looks at really those unique factors of your community. One of the things which we'll talk about later this evening is that has been a goal for us from our rating agencies as it relates to bonds, is rebuilding that fund balance. And with that success, I think we were one of the things that contributed to our success in getting a rating upgrade on this latest bond issue. We have used a little bit of reserves, and it's okay. The state allows you to balance your budget with reserves, but you certainly want to be very careful in your application of that each year. As I mentioned then, we look at capital and supplemental programs and services in the 2020 budget. Capital and equipment and vehicle purchases total about $651,000. Replaces 6 patrol vehicles, a combination of the in-car and body camera systems in the police department, a single axle dump truck, 3/4 ton pickup truck, and a skid steer in the public works department. And then it also includes $368,000 in supplemental or new programs and services, including increased tree maintenance on public property, funding for council constituent communications, greenhouse gas inventory update, a reestablishment of our planner's position, and a directed patrol unit in the police department. With that, I will turn it over to Emily Randall to give you the highlights of the general overhead and administration department.
I just have an overview of the department and kind of what is included in the administration. When people think of it, they may not think of all of the things that take place in the department, but it is, in general terms, a place to put things that don't fit nicely into other places. Also the kind of nuts and bolts, overhead expenses, things to keep the lights on at City Hall and Police Department in this building, our insurance, auditing, etc. And then in terms of programs, we do support for our boards and commissions, Communities for All Ages efforts that are across departments. And then the negotiation, the development agreements, and behind the scenes work for moving things forward, as well as things like tonight, the budget development. And then the staff that is included in that, city administrator, city clerk, assistant city administrator, finance director, our accounting staff, our human resources staff, and those positions.
I have an overview of the legislative and municipal court budgets. Legislative includes governing body, boards and commissions, and is focused on outreach to residents and businesses and interaction and involvement metro-wide, statewide, nationally, sharing information and best practices on a wide variety of issues and topics. The 2020 budget for legislative includes municipal organization memberships and various training and regional collaboration opportunities. The Mission Farm and Flower Market, increased tree maintenance on public property, council constituent communications, increased funding for that, and the greenhouse gas inventory update. And our municipal court includes 3 court clerks and a part-time municipal court judge and city attorney who serves as our prosecutor. We hold 14 dockets per month, including one that is a Spanish-speaking docket. And between July 1st of 2018 and June 30th of this year, there are a total of 7,952 traffic-related violations and 212 non-traffic violations. And in the municipal court budget, we'll be focusing on continued training opportunities for the court clerks and funding to support new court software purchased in 2019.
So the Public Works Department consists of 13 employees, full-time employees, responsible for street repairs, concrete repairs, snow removal during the winter, street sweeping throughout the city as frequently as we can throughout the year. On the stormwater side, we maintain inlet cleaning, small pipe and structure repairs that we can handle ourselves. Park side, we take care of the playgrounds, park maintenance, we take care of all the mowing contracts and chemical applications throughout the city for our turf management program. We do some of the structural repairs if our staff can handle it. We take care of general repairs on the facilities, not so much on the HVAC side, but we handle some painting and moving furniture and stuff like that. The big ticket items coming out of the public works budget for contractual expenses. Our biggest one is traffic signal lease from KCP&L at an annual cost of $453,000 a year. Service contracts, which the bigger ones are the mowing contract throughout the city, streetlight maintenance, which maintains all our streetlights and gives us the ability to call somebody to come out and fix them when they go bad. And also the streetlight power. The service contract is around $220,000, and the streetlight power is at $67,000. The biggest commodities we consume every year, depending on the weather, is salt for sure. It's around $60,000 a year if the snow falls. Fuel is $25,000. Vehicle repairs, $27,000 to $30,000 range, and then the park maintenance around $35,000, and that's taking care of the facility maintenance too, and some of the landscape beds and stuff like that's also included in that. And then the close fifth behind that is asphalt patching for sure. For 2020 capital equipment purchases, we're looking at replacing another single axle dump truck, a skid steer. In recent years, we added a second one to the fleet, which has been a big success on being able to take care of the roads in a quicker and better fashion. And then a lighted arrow board and one and the gas tube heaters for our public works facility that are starting to show their age. Thank you.
New Development Department. Our motto is to plan, build, and care for the city of Mission. So we typically review about an average of 14 development cases per year. We also administer the Business Improvement Grant Program, which is an annual program that provides grants to local businesses here in Mission for facade improvements and structural energy efficiency type improvements. We also do permitting and inspection of projects. We issue approximately 400 building permits annually. That results in coordinating approximately 1,500 inspections per year in all the different trades. We provide property maintenance and code enforcement, approximately 500 cases annually. 99% of those violations are resolved voluntarily. We also administer the rental licensing and inspection program for the city, as well as doing community outreach programs, assistance programs. Approximately $95,000 included in the 2020 budget for assistance programs. Finally, neighborhood grant programs. Construction activity, that's always the fun stuff. Our permitting has been dropping off a little bit in the past few years. In 2018, we issued 351 permits. But interestingly enough, the value has been going up on the permits we have been issuing. So in 2018, we issued permits with a total project value of $68 million. That's reflective of the apartment buildings for the Gateway project, as well as the EPC of the Mission Trails on Johnson Drive. So those two big projects in there. You'll see a value for 2019 year-to-date of $28 million. That reflects the Synergy building. So we went ahead and incorporated that in there, as well as some other projects that are going on. The remodeling of the Taco Bell restaurant. I believe McDonald's is in there as well. So we're just remodeling that.
Parks and Recreation Department plans and administers recreational programs for Mission residents and visitors at the Community Center, the Mission Family Aquatic Center, and in our 8 outdoor parks and throughout the trail system citywide. They also host a number of community-wide special events, including Bunny Extravaganza, the Summer Family Picnic, and holiday lights and festive sites. The Sylvester Powell Jr. Community Center is open almost 365 days a year. Right now we are at our height of providing a summer camp program, day camp program, which is one of our most successful programs there for about 180 kids every week. We've seen an increase in our senior programming over the last several years. We continue to stay focused on improving the self-sufficiency of the community center by doing a number of things, including trying to look at increased revenues from long-term rentals, health benefits, and corporate memberships. At the Mission Family Aquatic Center, it's hard to believe we're in our 6th season of operation. We have open swim 7 days a week. MoCan Swim Championships, which tomorrow will be yesterday and tomorrow will be the big days, and then parking will not be such an issue around City Hall any longer. But looking at another programming opportunities there, Free Family Fridays, pool party for pooches, movies, and our Super Pool Pass program, which allows our residents the opportunity to buy a pass that gives them access to other pools throughout Northeast Johnson County, continues to be very successful. On the park side, we are making progress, continuing to evaluate and recommend outdoor park amenities based on recommendations from the 2016 Park Master Plan and formalizing maintenance standards. Kudos to our Parks, Recreation, and Tree Commission this year, who's really jumped in and spent some extra hours applying those standards and looking to build out that program.
Promise to keep it short. So your police department has 29 sworn officers and 2 over-hires, which in the budget for next year will hopefully add 2 more full-time, which would put us at 31. Our patrol division uses motorcycles, bicycles, foot patrol, and cars. Police department, City Hall, as everyone knows, is working with an architecture firm to look at the existing building or possibly a new building for City Hall and the police station. Community partnerships between the police businesses and the residents is something that, since I've been the chief, we've been working on for 5 years. So, changes in the mental health co-responder program. We shared a co-responder with 6 other cities. Now we are down to 5 other cities, and Merriam and us are the 2 biggest departments in that group. And I will tell you that the service that our residents are getting that need it is much better. As Laura had mentioned before, the new patrol vehicle rotation, we're up on that 4-year mark. So at this point, we're looking for approval to buy 6 brand new patrol vehicles and keep 4 older ones as we've done in the past. And with that would also hopefully come the new cameras and new in the cars and new body cameras for the officers. It would be a much better product than what we are now. So the next page really gets down to it. I brought the stats for the first 6 months as well, so as you look at those numbers, calls for service, traffic stops, building checks, you can see what the total numbers were last year. Some of those went down. The fire and rescue calls went down a little bit. Every time that fire or rescue goes anywhere in this city, unless they say they don't need us, we go with them. Suspicious person is simply that. If you see somebody that looks different outside, prowlers or people that are prowling around your house in the middle of the night, which we don't want. If you look between Dave and Emily, their accidents, this city averages just under 1 accident per day, with the number of highways and the cars that run through this city having just under an accident a day on average is pretty good. So, real quick, I'm going to tell you that for the first half of 2019, drug activity calls are up 30%. Part of that is self-initiated stops and pedestrian checks and stuff by our officers. The last 2 years, we've been down almost 8 officers, and it's taken almost 2 years to get us back up to where we are today. So having more officers on the street is what has done that. So when you look at the numbers that are down, the disturbances, I will tell you that this year, so far in the first 6 months compared to last year, we have 130 more fight calls this year compared to last year. When you start looking at residence checks, our residence checks are down. If you go out of town and want the police department to come out and check your house once or twice a day, that's what we do. Suicidal subjects is mental health related calls, that is stayed the same. When you look at car checks, we've got 600 more car checks compared to last year. That's traffic stops. Now I will tell you that when you're looking at those numbers, that traffic stops, when you're 8 officers down, patrol is the most important thing that we do, and you don't have a traffic division. But I will tell you that the officers downstairs are dedicated to what they're doing, and they're some of the best people I know. So I hope that was short and sweet enough. Does anybody have any questions on police? Yes, ma'am.
And do we have any current officers that are bilingual?
We do have one that speaks Spanish. Yes.
Outside of our general fund, our operating fund, our next series of funds that comprise the largest portion of our budget are those that support our 5-year capital improvement program. We budget in 3 program areas: stormwater, streets, and parks and recreation. Across those 3 areas, we generate about $6 million annually in revenue. Most of those are dedicated revenue streams that can only be spent on those single-purpose areas. It helps with, I think, transparency and communication with the public as we put that 5-year plan together. In 2020, so we adopt a 5-year plan that allows us to not only use our dollars to leverage and think about how we leverage other people's dollars, whether that be county, state, or federal funding. It also allows us to coordinate our projects with other surrounding communities and or utility companies. But we only adopt the first year of the capital improvement program with our budget. Highlights for the 2020 capital improvement program on the stormwater side include design and construction of the Rock Creek Channel improvements from Roeland Drive to just east of Knoll. An increase in funding for the repair and maintenance fund. We're seeing continued failures of corrugated metal pipe throughout town, and so looking for ways to beef that up and get that aging inventory replaced. And then stormwater debt service. On the street side, the funding supports our annual street maintenance program. In 2020, it will also include a UBAS, which is a thin surface treatment to Lamar from Shining Mission Parkway to Fox Ridge that will include new striping for bike lanes. The design of the Fox Ridge project from 51st Street to Lamar. Debt service, existing debt service on the street side, and then just miscellaneous repairs, sidewalk striping, signage replacement. On the Parks and Recreation side, for 2020, we're looking at improving wayfinding and park entrance signage at all of our facilities, restrooms at Mohawk Park, debt service on the outdoor aquatic facility, and at the community center, the 2 big projects in 2020 will be a resurfacing of the indoor pool deck and a resurfacing of the indoor walking track, both of which will be significant improvements. I might keep going, so we don't have to, is that all right? I'm not going to arm wrestle you for the other funds. We have a few other funds that, as I mentioned, that we do included that we wanted to highlight. The Mission Convention and Visitors Bureau Fund is legally required to account for the transient guest tax, which is hotel tax that we receive currently off of the Wood Spring Suites. Primarily, those dollars are used to support the Mission magazine, but it has generated enough in recent years that we are recommending to allocate $10,000 in the 2020 budget for 2 sets of banners to be installed along Johnson Drive. We also use the MCVB fund as a pass-through for expenses related to our holiday adoption program and for the Mission Business Partnership. But those are straight revenue in equals expenses out. We also have a special alcohol fund, which is used to portion of a third of the liquor by the drink or alcohol tax collected in our community and distributed by the state. $85,000 is what that generates. $50,000 of that is recommended to go to United Community Services Drug and Alcoholism Council to support their programs from a number of grantees. $15,000 goes to support our DARE efforts in local schools, and $30,000 goes to support the mental health co-responder program that the chief mentioned previously. We also have and are required to account for our TIF and CID funds. These are things that have been established to provide incentives on specific redevelopment projects. The distributions are controlled by existing development agreements. And at this time, we have active TIF and CID funds for the Mission Crossing project and the Cornerstone Commons development. And then our solid waste utility fund, which is what supports our residential trash recycling and yard waste program. Currently, residents pay 86% of that cost. The city subsidizes about 14% of that from the general fund. We are going to be going through the process of soliciting or taking proposals for a new contract to be effective January 1st of 2020. So that is our 2020 budget highlight in a nutshell. The next slide is really just a reminder of how you can stay connected with us throughout the year, whether it's on the budget or a variety of other issues. So in person, online, email, social media, a whole host of ways. So if you're interested in getting the information, We are out. I believe we started our budget conversations in May with a work session kind of talking about goals and objectives, and I will update this presentation with the actual specific dates and links to the memos. So each time we've talked about it, we've provided a memo with a lot of detail. We did a work session very specifically on revenues in the general fund. Then we looked at the capital equipment supplemental requests in the general fund. So we've met in May. We had an extended conversation at our June 5th meeting, and then also at our July 10th meeting. So we've talked about and touched the budget several times. We will have several remaining steps to get to our final budget adoption. That will include our legally required public hearing, which will be held at the Finance and Admin Committee meeting on August 7th at 6:30. Budget adoption would be scheduled for the August 21st City Council meeting at 7, which would then allow us to have our budget certified to the county by the August 25th deadline. Happy to take any questions.
Excellent job.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Great, quick.
All right, seeing no questions, that concludes item number 2 on our agenda. Moving on to item 3, issuance of notes and bonds. We do have on our agenda this evening the issuance of the 2019A general obligation bonds. Mr. Kimmel with Ellers is here to give us an update on the bond sale today. We will then have 3 separate motions to authorize these bonds. Bruce, please.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. I'm Bruce Kimmel from Ellers, and I'm really pleased to be with you tonight to share the excellent bond sale results that this city achieved. I think you all have the sale day report in front of you, and I'll just hit a few highlights. First of all, you may recall that the bond offering was for $4,210,000, and you probably notice a very different number in front of you of $3,470,000. You might be asking, how is it that we can fund $4.1 million of stormwater improvements with only $3.5 million of bonds? I'll get to that in a moment, but I did want to highlight the fact that this is a significantly reduced final par amount on this debt offering. We took bids at 10 a.m. on the city's behalf, and we were very pleased to receive 6 bids. The winning bid came from BOK Financial Securities out of Milwaukee. Actually, why don't we flip ahead to the bid tabulation, which is on the next page. And this winning bid, actually all of the bids were really significantly below both our pre-sale estimates, which were purposefully high, but also even what I was hopeful for in terms of an actual bid today. The market is just extremely hungry for bonds right now, especially Kansas bonds. There's a relative lack of supply versus demand. And with your recent credit rating upgrade, the size of this bond issue, the duration of the bond issue being relatively short, all this put you really in the sweet spot for the market. And so you can see BOK's winning bid of 1.71, which was really phenomenal. I was hoping for maybe to break 2% thereabouts, and to be at 1.71 was really a tremendous result. And what's also very interesting is if you go through the other 5 bids from UBS, the Baker Group, Baird, UMB, and Fifth Third, you can see that only 7 basis points, or 0.07%, separates the very best from the very worst. So just again, extremely aggressive bidding, and all to the city's benefit and to the stormwater utilities benefit. Moving on, Mayor and council members, to the next couple of pages. You can see the resized debt structure I'm sorry. I was going to explain what was going on with the BOK bid, if I can bring you back to the bid tabulation. So your true interest rate, which is sort of the calculation that we use, is 1.71% from BOK. But you can see that the actual coupons, or the face interest rates on these bonds, are 5s and 4s. Well, how does that work exactly? So they want, the investors that BOK is selling these bonds to want those high coupons because there's an idea that when they go to sell those again, maybe they decide they don't want to hold the bond after 2 or 3 years, they think that in this rate environment, they'll have a better chance in the future of reselling those bonds if they have a high face value or a high face coupon on them. But you can see your actual yields, what you're truly paying per maturity, ranges from 1.21 to 1.79%. So the differential is reflected in what's called a premium. So in other words, BOK offered roughly $800,000 of premium in order to buy these bonds with 5% and 4% coupons. Okay, so a really quite very large premium. And then since the city didn't need any more than $4.1 million for the stormwater projects, we had direction from Ms. Smith and Mr. Scott to take all of the premium that we received to reduce the bond size. And the premium amount itself decreases a little bit as you decrease the bond size. But if you then go to that sources and uses of funds page, you can see that we still ended up with a little over $700,000 of net premium to the city, again, that we were able to use to reduce the bond amount to the $3,470,000. So maybe more than the Cliff's Notes version of that, but I know I get questions about how exactly can we get that low of an interest rate when it looks like it's a 5%, and that's why. It's a strange environment currently. Moving on to the debt service page, you may recall that we structured this bond issue in concert with city staff to really meet the needs and the cash flow expectations for the stormwater utility fund. And so the first 3 years of a roughly $215,000 per year are right spot on with what we had projected and what we wanted to target. And then you can see that the next 7 years, it's roughly $570,000 a year of debt service. That's roughly $45,000 less per year than what we had in our pre-sale estimate. So you bundle all that together and it's over $320,000 of total improvement over what we had projected. So definitely opens up some breathing room, some capacity to do future projects and just deal with unseen contingencies in that stormwater fund. Are there any questions about the bond sale or the resulting debt service before I touch on the credit rating? Okay. I wish I could take all the credit for this. It's fun delivering these kinds of reports. So the credit rating was a real nice feather in the city's cap, and it really reflects the hard work that you've done as the governing body and that city staff has done in rebuilding fund balances and doing all the other things that have really presented a strong presence to the rating agency. It's been about 5 years since the city has gone through a full rating discussion with S&P, and so we had a lot to bring them up to speed on, and luckily we had great analysts to work with, but also staff did an excellent job of really describing what's going on here with economic development and housing development, exactly how and how the city has rebuilt its fund balances, the liquidity and the flexibility that those fund balances provide the city, and your plans to retain fund balances above the city's 25% fiscal policy going forward. And so all in all, I can get into some of the details, but all in all, it was pretty apparent to us that this should be a slam dunk to get the rating upgrade, and I was very pleased when we got the call from S&P that yes, it was very apparent to them that Mission was strongly in the AA+ category with a stable outlook. There's only one notch higher than AA+, and that's AAA. I think it's probably going to be a little while before you get to AAA, just because Mission is a relatively small community of about 10,000 people. Most AAAs are, like Overland Park. But the AA+ definitely helped with your credit, your interest rates today, and it's just a great reflection of the work you've done to make Mission a strong, sustainable community. I do want to note the only possible weakness in the credit characteristics are as it relates to your debt profile, but we knew this, and it's really, S&P has to use a certain set of adjectives. Weak isn't really meant to be a slam on the city, it's just one of the 5 terms that they can use. And they did make it clear that they said, yes, you have somewhat elevated debt loads, but the fact that you have it rapidly amortizing is a big plus for them, that you're paying it off very, very promptly. And they fully understand why you've issued debt and for the types of infrastructure that you've issued debt. So congratulations on that. We're really pleased to have been part of this process, both with the credit rating and the sale results. The last thing I wanted to just show is, you've heard me here before, I think even starting in 2013, 2014, rates are going to go up, rates are going to go up. Well, rates do go up, but then they come back down, and this is just a 2-year snapshot showing how we were at these historic lows, and they did come up, and right now you're back down to where rates were 2 years ago. So who knows what the future will hold, but we are pleased to help you lock in rates this low for this transaction. Thanks.
Just curious, is there anybody besides Standard & Poor's that does these ratings?
Yes, there's Moody's Investor Service and also Fitch, but for municipalities, it's mostly S&P and Moody's.
So the upgraded bond rating usually results in lower interest costs.
Correct.
So over the life of this issue, we will have savings, and over the life of future issues, we will have savings.
Correct.
What is the savings over the life of this issue related to the rating bond?
Sure. Mr. Mayor, you know, when rates are this low, there's not a lot of room for rating spreads, as we call them, but I would say that conservatively, I would estimate that you're saving at least $30,000 to $40,000 in terms of lower interest costs from having the AA plus versus the AA. So, you know, $3,000 to $4,000 isn't a huge amount, but as you saw in your budget, every little bit matters per year. So, and as rates go up, if I can just add, if and when rates do go up, having that AA plus will certainly pay larger dividends on future bond issues.
And if you read through the rating report, the upgrade is because of strong fiscal policies,
Right.
strong management. So there's a lot of good things in this report that you should read, because it really does paint a very good picture of the city and the policies that we have implemented.
Absolutely.
And it's not an overnight thing.
Right. Well, thank you. Excuse me, I will sit. I don't have my bronchial infection anymore, but I still have allergies. So I'll not bother you anymore with my clearing my throat. I did want to note that Kevin Wempe from Gilmore & Bell is here if you have any questions about the ordinance or the resolution. And thank you again.
Very good job.
All right. I would entertain a motion on each of these three items.
Mayor, I move that the city council accept the winning bid for the city's general obligation bond series 2019A from BOK Financial with a true interest cost of 1.726%, and that the mayor and the clerk be authorized and directed to execute the bid form selling bonds to the best bidder on the basis of said bid and the terms specified in the notice of bond sale.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion on this issue? Seeing none, please call for the vote.
And Councilmember Rothrock, did you second that?
No.
Great, thank you, I'm sorry. Davis,
Aye.
Schlesmacher,
Aye.
Flora,
Aye.
Thomas,
Aye.
Inman,
Aye.
Crane,
Aye.
Rothrock,
Aye.
Quinn,
Aye.
motion carries.
Mayor, I move that the city council adopt an ordinance authorizing and providing for the issuance of general obligation bond series 2019A of the city of Mission, Kansas, providing for the levy and collection of an annual tax for the purposes of paying the principal and of the interest on said bonds as they become due, authorizing certain other documents and actions in connection therewith, and making certain covenants with respect to thereto.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion. Seeing none, please call for the vote.
Flora,
Aye.
Quinn,
Aye.
Inman,
Aye.
Crane,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Schlesmacher,
Aye.
Thomas,
Aye.
Rothrock,
Aye.
motion carries.
Yes, you take this.
Mayor, I move the city council adopt a resolution prescribing the form and details of and authorizing and directing the sale and delivery of general obligation bonds, Series 2019A of the city of Mission, Kansas, previously authorized by ordinance number 1502 of the issuer, making certain covenants and agreements to provide for the payment and security thereof, and and authorizing certain other documents and actions connected therewith.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion. Please call for the vote.
Inman. Aye. Flora.
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
Thomas.
Aye.
Crane.
Aye.
Quinn.
Aye.
Rothrock.
Aye.
Schlesmacher.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right. Thank you. Great news. That concludes item 3. Moving on to item 4, this is our consent agenda. Our consent agenda has 11 items on it this evening. Our council committees met on July 10th and discussed each of these items in detail. The committee agreed that the items listed on our consent agenda are routine enough to be considered under one motion this evening. Several of the items that were on that, considered at that committee will be presented under committee reports later on the agenda. If a council member or a member of the public would like any item removed from the consent agenda, they may request that at this time. If not, I would entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move the city council adopt the consent agenda as printed, items 4A through 4K.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion. Seeing none, please call for the vote.
Flora.
Aye.
Inman. Aye. Crane.
Aye.
Quinn.
Aye.
Rothrock.
Aye.
Schlesmacher.
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
Thomas.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, moving on to item 5, public comments. This is an opportunity for a member of the public to address council on an item that is not on tonight's agenda. Is there anyone that would like to speak? Seeing none, we move on to item 6, action items from the Planning Commission. We do have one item from our Planning Commission this evening. Mr. Scott, will you provide an overview and an update on the amended preliminary and final development plan for the tidal wave auto spa?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The subject property is located at 6501 Johnson Drive. It's been a convenience and gas store for many years. Mr. Petty Harden with Tidal Wave Auto Spa entered into a contract with the owner, Block Real Estate Company, to purchase the property with the intention of demolishing the current structures and building a car wash on the property. The property is zoned CP2B, Planned Retail and Service District. The car wash is a permitted use within the zoning district. The property is also located within the Form-Based Code Overlay District. The Form-Based Code speaks more to the form of the structures on the site as opposed to the use of the site itself, which is more applicable to traditional zoning. The particular Form-Based Code dictates a structure that is a minimum of 2 stories on the property, and one that would be more compliant with the built environment, encouraging pedestrian-oriented activity facing the street. In making an application to the city for redevelopment of the property, Mr. Harden and his associates worked with the city staff to design a project that would meet the intent of the Form-Based Code by providing a 2-story structure in front of the site with a wash tunnel at the back. The lower level will be for vacuuming and detailing automobiles that have gone through the wash tunnel, and the second level will be for offices associated with the auto spa company in that region. The Form-Based Code allows for the applicant that can meet certain requirements of the code to have a single review with the Planning Commission and acceptable to the Commission to proceed with construction drawings and permits. For this particular project, the applicant was not able to meet all the requirements of the code, so they proceeded under the more traditional 2-step review process of the preliminary and final development plan. The application for the preliminary development plan was heard by the Planning Commission in March of 2018, and the Commission voted for a recommendation to the City Council. The application for the preliminary development plan was considered by the City Council in April of 2018 and approved. The final development plan was approved by the Planning Commission in May of 2018. Since this time, the gasoline tanks have been removed from the property and the contamination remediated. Tidal Wave is closed in the sale of the property. Tidal Wave has submitted construction drawings for review, and those have been approved. Tidal Wave has also been cost valuing the construction and come to the conclusion they are not able to build a 2-story structure for the amount that their lender would be willing to provide them a loan. They are now requesting an amendment to replace the 2-story structure with a 1-story structure that would consist of the area for vacuuming and detailing automobiles that have gone through the wash tunnel. All the other aspects of the project that were approved in the final development plan will be applicable, including materials used in the structure, landscaping, and the streetscaping in front of the building. Do you have those photographs? I'm just going to bring those up. Yeah, that was the original building that was approved. As I said, it sits at the front of the property. There's zero lot line to the sidewalk. It does have streetscaping, trees, landscaping, all the elements that are required in the Johnson Drive design guidelines, as well as the form-based code. It has the appropriate amount of exterior stonework and brickwork, the glazing on both levels, and some interesting designs on the roof to kind of give a little bit more detail. And it's like I said, the second floor would be for offices, the first floor would be that area where folks would be able to pull their car in and then vacuum that out or detail after going through the car wash tunnel. The second one they are now proposing is to make that a one-story structure that would be just for the vacuum detailing of the vehicles. Other than that, we have all the same design elements as the first building, including materials and glazing, etc. Mr. Harden is present tonight. He can speak a little bit more to his request specifically, and he can answer any questions that you have as well. So I'm going to go to Mr. Harden now.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. My name is Petty Harden. I saw you a little over a year ago, Tidal Wave Auto Spas. Thank you all for having me on the agenda tonight. Wanted to speak just briefly for a few minutes about this project. As you know, we've been working on this for almost 3 years now, between myself and our team. There's been a whole lot that's happened, let's say, the last year since we gained approval from you guys. First thing we did, like Mr. Scott said, is we did have the underground storage tanks removed, all the product line removed. Initially, there was some concern about contamination on the site, so we were not able to do anything until we knew that we had those removed and got a clean bill of health. So we do have the no further action letter that took roughly 90 days to acquire that, to remove the tanks. So that was our first order of business after we gained our approval since the last time I saw you. We then completed all of our drawings, our civil and our architectural drawings. We submitted those simultaneously to the staff to review them in efforts to purchase a permit, as well as we made multiple copies to get to our subcontractors to price the job. That took several weeks. We obtained the permit, and about the same time we started getting our prices back from our subs, and we were absolutely shocked when we got the prices back of what we had approved, what it would actually cost. And if you remember when I stood before you a little over a year ago, I committed to put an extra $1 million of cash injection into the project to accommodate for the overages that the form-based code would cause. And we really felt like $1 million would do that. And we were suddenly awakened when we learned that that building up front along Johnson Drive came in at $1.8 million. And so we're not only $1 million over, which we could have handled, we're $800,000 more over, which really sent it into the stratosphere. And when I turned those numbers into our bank, they just kind of shook their head and said, you know, we finance a lot of tidal waves. We've got 6 other projects in the Kansas City market that one bank is financing, and they just said they can't be a part of this one. And so that's when it really sunk into me that it was time to go back to the drawing boards. And one of the first calls I made was to Mr. Scott to let him know what we were running into and to be candid about finding solutions to help make it work. So what we did was we said, let's value engineer this building as best we can. Let's keep the 2-story look. Let's, with staff, say, okay, there's so much stacked stone, let's remove some of that. Let's maybe not put the super thick insulated windows in there. We went down through a number of items, and it got to where we even said, let's don't finish the top floor. Let's build a shell and not have our offices up there, and but maintain the aesthetics. But as we stripped it down, it became as we were just halfway building something, and it wasn't that functional. And then it started compromising the aesthetics the more we pulled the expensive items out of it. And so we've never been over budget on a project to this magnitude. We've got over 36 washes in operation now, with with 6 others in development in the Kansas City metro area. We've always been able to make our construction budget numbers work. There's been times where we couldn't afford the land, maybe the land cost was too expensive, or maybe the property was too big, and just different things that make deals not work. But from a construction standpoint, we've never run into this type problem to this magnitude. So we've explored all our options. Realistically, our current situation is that the form-based code has got us in this situation. It's caused us a lot of grief, a lot of problems. I don't like the word problems, I like the word opportunity. I don't want to be part of a problem, I want to be part of a solution. I want to be part of a community, but I've got to have something that works. And so what we came up with is redesigning the building that we're presenting here tonight. And with this redesign, I think that we can accomplish everything that everybody involved would like to see. I think the newly redesigned building is going to function just fine. It will actually, if we go to 1 story, we won't have a stairwell that goes from the 1st story to the 2nd story, so it'll add an extra vacuum spot, which is good for customers. So functionality, it's going to serve fine. Aesthetically, like Mr. Scott said, we're going to maintain all the key aspects that we had in the other version. And then finally, economically, we can make that work. It's my opinion and my belief that everybody that's involved in this project wins in this scenario. I don't like to be involved in things where somebody loses. And what I mean by that is that I believe that you all, council members, Mr. Mayor, would be very proud to see what our final product will be. We've always operated under the Chick-fil-A mentality of we want to be the most attractive business in the community. We want to be the cleanest, the friendliest, not just the most attractive auto spa or car wash, but the most attractive facility in the community. We think that we'll meet those goals with that. I think that our customers will appreciate it and they'll enjoy using the facility. I think the community as a whole will be proud to see that structure and that business on that particular location versus what's there now with the Bolero. And then finally, our team members and our staff will greatly appreciate having a nice facility to work within. That's really all I have with that. I am asking for your vote of approval to approve the redesigned building. And, together we can keep this project on track and keep mission moving forward. And that's what I ask tonight. I appreciate your time and your consideration, and I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have.
All right, let me have a point of the process before we start.
Sure.
So the choices before us are to approve the Planning Commission recommendation, which is simple majority, to deny the recommendation, which is a supermajority of 6, or remand it, and then that's a simple majority to remand and give them a reason for remanding. What I would like to do is, if you have specific questions for Mr. Harden, if we can do those at this time, if we could hold our opinions until we have a motion on the table, then we can turn to that. Okay. So.
Could I add one more thing that I didn't mention is that staff called, Laura had called, we talked last week about the current condition of the property, and I know that's been a concern to a lot of folks. I wanted to address that while I had the floor just for a minute. Since our conversation, or even before our conversation, I have made contact with utility companies to disconnect the gas lines as well as the electrical lines, also the water and the sewer. We've got those disconnects in the process of being disconnected. The state of Kansas requires a 10-day notification to do a demolition, so we could, pending the outcome of tonight's meeting, I could call the state, get on a 10-day calendar, get their approval, and then as early as Monday, August 5th, we could have our demolition company in place, ready to mobilize and take down the existing building now. So I wanted to make that my high point, not skip over that.
Mr. Quinn. Yes, sir. I was just curious what the major problems were that caused that price to be so high that you guys anticipated a shock.
The stacked stone on the previous building is enormous on the second level. If you show that around those windows, that whole building is stacked stone. That material, I can't quote it offhand as far as what the material per square foot is and then the labor, but I want to say together it's about $40 a square foot with material and labor, but I may be off on that, but those numbers were super high. One main...
And that's a different material than you use on the other 6 that you're building?
Well, we still put stacked stone on our car wash buildings themselves, the actual structure that washes the vehicles. We've never done a vacuum. This is just simply a vacuum canopy. We normally spend about $125,000 to $150,000 for a gas station style canopy that the customers can pull under and vacuum. In this scenario, I would like to remind you all that this particular building is not an income producing building for us. So sure, the wash is paid for. The customers can vacuum if they like afterwards. So we're $1.8 million for that particular building. We're used to about $150,000 for a campus. That's what the big difference is. I would add to your point or your question, the upper level is as approved there is really thick insulated glass. And if you'll notice on the bottom level, you've got maybe 10 windows that face Johnson Drive. And you don't have any windows on the back because that's where customers pull in. So the bottom level's got 10 windows. But if you think about the top level, it's got 20. And they're double thick. And then you've got the HVAC systems up there that got very expensive, as well as you run into the sprinkler system in the 2-story. That runs very expensive. And then you've got the stairwell that goes from the bottom to the top. Those are some of the major high-ticket dollar items that
That you didn't anticipate.
that I had $1 million to anticipate it, but not $1.8 million. Yes, sir.
Mr. Davis. Originally, you had proposed that this was going to be a headquarters for your offices.
Right.
And what happened to that?
We really didn't need a headquarters for office, but we knew that with the 2-story, we would not be able to lease out the top story to another business because all of our parking in the back is for the car wash customers. On busy days, those spots were all vacuum stalls. So by building the 2-story, it was never a thought process to us to be able to lease it out because we would not be able to offer the tenant anywhere to park their vehicles, really regardless of how many they had. And so we just said, well, by default, we'll use it ourselves instead of trying to lease it out. And we could use it. We don't have a major use for it, but that was the intent at that time.
So where's your Midwest headquarters?
We're based, our main home office is out of Georgia, but we do want to have a regional office somewhere here. We've got 7 locations under development right now. So we do want to have eventually training headquarters, but we just have 1 location open in the market now, and we've got 6 others that are coming right behind it in various stages.
Have you had experience with form-based code in other cities?
Gateway, overlay districts, things like that, but nothing to this magnitude. We've dealt with it a lot and jumped over a lot of hurdles. But this one's been the most challenging, I'll tell you.
So this is unusual, or our requirements are too stringent? I mean, I guess you're experienced in this. You have over 30 locations. You're developing rapidly. So you were aware this was a form-based code area.
Yes, sir.
And I guess I'm wondering where the disconnect was. When you encounter a form-based code, you know there's going to be requirements that are tough sometimes.
And that's when we said, let's get creative. We want to be a part of the mission. Let's agree to the 2-story. Let's do it. Let's put an extra $1 million into the project. And then it slapped us in the face. And that's when the reality set in. So,
Ms. Laura?
Yeah, I had a question, going back to your 2018 presentation. I apologize, I don't remember if this came from you or from the attorney at the time, but in the print materials we have in our packet, Tidal Wave recognized at the time that a 2-story building was, quote, paramount to meeting the objectives of the form-based code. And so now that we're not looking at a 2-story building, I was wondering, in your opinion, if you still meet the intent of our form-based code, and if so, how?
I believe we meet the intent and that we've left all the key elements. If we could go back to the revised building. Okay. I think if you flip between the 2 buildings, the intent intent is there. We've got high roof lines, I've got the details of those heights, cupola, louvered windows. We've, like Mr. Scott said earlier, we've left all the key elements in there, all the streetscaping. I think, and if you look along Johnson Drive and compare what's there now versus this being there up front, I think it'll stand out and be a beautiful facility. So I believe that it meets the intent of form-based code. Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Thomas?
Just a couple logistical questions about this design. When I zoomed in on my iPad, I saw it looks like there's still doors there. I'm just wondering where those doors lead, if it's just
On the front?
the bays.
They wouldn't be usable doors on the front. That would not
They'd just be
be
there.
for people off the street to walk into.
And then how high is this building?
I've got 3 heights that I can pull up that we talked about in the planning commission meeting a couple of weeks ago. The highest point is from the ground to the very highest point of what we call the cupola up there at the very top. That's 28 feet, 7.5 inches. The next dimension would be from the ground to the top of the main roof line. That would be 20 feet, 10.5 inches. And then from the ground to the gutter line would be 12 feet, 8.5 inches. So it's still a pretty substantially tall building, I would say. Thank you.
Mr. Scott, what is the height requirement in form-based code? He said it was 20 feet to the roof line.
Call specific height element. There's a minimum of 2 stories, a maximum of 4 stories. I can check on that if you like. Go back to my office and look.
Mr. Scott, one more question. Because, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is a mid-level size building in terms of how it's classified in form-based code application. Would it have made more sense for, now that it's a 1-story building, for it to be more of a parking structure type building? Because it doesn't, to me, with the open bays going in the back, it seems more of a parking structure than an actual building.
Right. Yeah, it would be defined as a structure under the codes because it's not a habitable space.
And so with that, what would be the requirement for a 1-story parking structure rather than a mid-level that requires 2 stories?
There's nothing specifically in the form-based code that addresses a 1-story parking structure. The code speaks to parking structures, but the intent is for the parking structure to be behind the building. So not really visible to the public. So there's nothing in particular about the height or the size of the parking structure.
Mr. Mayor, would it be appropriate to address the council?
Sure. Come on up, Frank.
Frank Bruce, 5706 Lamar, Mission, Kansas. Pete Haven, our land use attorney, went on record, I believe it's the March 21st, 2018 Planning Commission minutes, stating form-based code is a guideline and not a regulation. As a result, when looking at this, they were presenting something that normally is not part of a car wash, that would screen the car wash from the residential area across Johnson Drive. So it seemed appropriate to vary from the guideline to approve a 1-story building that was much more attractive than what's there now in the interest of our business community.
So Frank, you're on record saying you don't like the Valero station that's there now?
I think I could safely say that, yes.
All right, thank you, Frank.
Thank you.
Any other questions before we entertain a motion?
I just have one. If we were to move forward with this tonight, do you know what kind of a timeline we would be on to start construction? I know you mentioned the demolition timeline.
Right. We've got, we do have 6 other projects going now. This one would be a total of 7 projects. We just opened one. We have 6 more under development. This one would be 5th on that list. And so we would start, hopefully, I know once we start, even if we started today, we're going to run into winter at some point because it's more than a 6-month process and we've never built something to this magnitude. So I'm budgeting 9 months from the date that we start construction. So if we do the demolition in early August, that I think we could have the demolition done in a week's time. As far as moving our crews from the other jobs, we're spacing the jobs out to where we have site work, a foundation, and we put our steel up, they're recycling and moving the subs from job to job. So I can tell you that when we start, it'll be a 9-month process, considering 3 months with the winter. We just did that on our most recent project and got delayed several months. As, you know, the winter was pretty tough on us, but it's hard for me to put on the calendar when we would open. If you approved it tonight, when I can give you a drop dead opening date, I can't do that just yet. We're juggling a lot of other projects, but I'm motivated to go quick, or at least tear down what's out there now. I know people are tired of seeing that, and I'm tired of seeing it. I'll tear that down quick.
May I have one other question?
Yes.
So you mentioned that demolition schedule will trigger if we approve the plans tonight.
Yes.
Do you think it's reasonable as the current property owner to condition the demolition of the dilapidated building on our approval, seeing as that you are now owner
Put
of the
condition
property?
on it. Sure. You approved it, and we'll expedite the demolition just like I spoke of.
By me holding the demolition if we don't approve, does that seem like a reasonable outcome?
If you don't approve, we've already spent the money to pull the tanks out, and then the demolition of that building is going to be about $65,000 to $75,000. And frankly, if I don't get it approved, I can try to sell that property, but then somebody else has got to start over with what they're going to use it for, and I just don't have a lot of motivation to spend that money. I could either sell it, try to sell it, or maybe wait till the code change one day to do something else with it. Realistically, I think that would be my 2 options.
Mr. Davis.
Mr. Harden?
Yes, sir.
I thought that the removal of the tanks was actually done by the former property owner.
It was. It was taken from the escrow money that we closed with, correct.
So you paid for the removal of the tanks, or did he?
In the sales price, but it was basically figured in that, but no, I did not write the check for that, for the removal of the tanks. Once the tank, it was a condition of our sale. Once the tanks were removed and we got a clean bill of health, then we would close the property.
But you said that you had the expense, and actually the expense.
I said it cost about $75,000, I believe, which was the budget to do that. That did not come out of our pocket. It came out of the proceeds of the sale from us buying the property. So I guess it did come out of my pocket, but.
Yes. Are we done with questions? Did you find an answer to the height question, Mr. Scott? Okay, that's fine. Yeah.
Your minor,
There's nothing specifically in the form-based code on feet, just the required number of stories. Just kind of finding a reference point in the traditional zoning for MS2, 3 feet is really about 43 stories equals about 45 feet. So you kind of do the math in your head, 28 feet, probably about 2 stories.
All right. If there's no more questions, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to move that the City Council remand this project, case number 1903, back to the Planning Commission. And the basis for that is that I do not believe that this meets the goal of the city in terms of the comprehensive plan. We had a deviation basically in the last review of this project, and this amendment certainly does not meet the 2-story requirement for this area. I do believe that the form-based code was developed for the purpose of a goal for the city, that we would have structures that were reusable
Okay.
for the future.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a motion. Is there a second?
second.
We have a motion and a second. I would say that if we're going to remand this, we need to give the Planning Commission some direction. And so I guess, I understand what you're saying, that was your opinion, but what are we remanding this to the Planning Commission to do? So that is
I will speak to that. I believe that the planning commission has an obligation to follow the form-based code. And if they believe that the comprehensive plan is not what they need to review these kind of projects, then some sort of amendment to the comprehensive plan should be proposed. And in the absence of that, that is our current policy. As a city, that is the goal for that area in terms of development. And I do not believe that this amendment meets that goal.
And I guess I would say that you're still not giving the planning commission direction. I mean, I guess, because if we can send it back, but unless they have a overnight change of heart, there's nothing, they're going to send it back to us again in the same way. So I guess,
We just give it a reason to vote against it.
any other opinions, comments?
On the
Yes, yes.
motion?
On the motion.
Okay, no, no.
All right, then, call for the vote.
Davis,
Aye.
Quinn,
Nay.
Rothrock,
Nay.
Inman. Nay. Flora,
Aye.
Crane,
Nay.
Thomas,
Aye.
Schlossmacher.
Nay.
Motion fails.
All right, so we're back to entertaining a motion.
Mayor, I move the city council uphold the recommendation of the planning commission and approve case number 19-03, amendment of the preliminary and final site development plan for Tidal Wave Auto Spa at 6501 Johnson Drive, which entails removing the second floor of the structure at the front of the property with all conditions from the original preliminary and final development plans still required.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, discussion. Ms. Craven?
You did a great presentation, and I'm going to tell you, I've had more calls on that obnoxious looking building, which is disturbing to me that it's in my city. It's disturbing because if a household looked like that, I'd be driving by every day with little tags. It's really disappointing because we want to welcome business and we encourage you to use your creativity. The way it looks right now is just extremely disappointing. As you're starting a business here, what will it be like 3 years down the road? I mean, it's a concern to me, and I just thought I'd express that. I support your business, and I want you to succeed, and we want everything we can to welcome you to the city. But leaving it like that for this period of time is extremely concerning to me. That's all I'm saying.
Ms. Laura?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I just had a couple of comments about my thoughts on the form-based code as it applies to this project, and they do tie into what Councilmember Crane just said. You know, I think the former plan with the two-story structure in the front was a stretch with respect to the form-based code, but it was adhering to the spirit of the form-based code, if not the exact letter. And I really appreciated the good faith efforts that were made at that time, and I did vote to approve the original plan. But I think now, you know, come back with a substantial change that, in my opinion, no longer meets the intent of the form-based code. If you look at the form-based code in connection with our comprehensive plan and the materials we have from staff, it's intended to create a public, pedestrian-oriented development along Johnson Drive. And it's to envision mixed-use redevelopment for this area with buildings that are intended to be reusable in the future for future purposes. And I think here, instead of a public, pedestrian-oriented, reusable building, we now have a vacuum bay. And so I think that that no longer meets with the spirit and intent of the form-based code. And I second Councilmember Crane's concern, which you might have picked up on from my previous question, that leaving the property as it is now, if the developer doesn't get what it wants, doesn't seem like a friendly entry into being a business member of mission.
Mr. Quinn?
Just, I guess, on what Councilperson Flora just said, I wanted to reiterate that the land use attorney, Pete Evan, said and told the committee that the form-based code is a recommendation. Does not have to be followed to the letter of the law. The bays, that was in the original plan. That's what it was before, was vacuum bays. So that didn't change. see a problem with it. It's not what I would call a reusable structure anyway. If another business wanted to move in there, what would they do with it? That's what it is. It's a bay for vacuuming your car. But it looks really nice on the Johnson Drive side. It doesn't look like a car wash there. It's gonna look so much better than what we've seen there for a long time. I think you're all gonna love it.
Ms. Thomas?
I would also like to see the Bolero gone, and I would like to see Tidal Wave be successful, but along the lines of Councilmember Flora, I don't see this as consistent with the vision of what we're imagining for Johnson Drive, and that we spent hours and months as a city working together to try and figure out. So with that, I will not be voting that we move forward with this, because ultimately I don't know if this building can be reused, and that's really one of the underlying goals of what we're trying to do.
You didn't know if the other one could be.
There was a second floor with office spaces that definitely could be.
Mr. Shaw?
Yeah, I think, the conversation here is obviously bigger than this car wash project. It's more about the form-based code in general. We're gonna have to have a lot more conversation about that, I think, going forward, and what that really means for the city, and if it's even feasible, because we've had other recent things that we've done that basically said we don't care about paying attention to the form-based code in other areas as well.
Right.
And I think that when you've got a business owner who's looking to come in and invest money in your city, I agree on the condition of the property. It's been pretty frustrating. I drive by that every day on my way to and from work. It's kind of unfortunate that it's been left in that condition so long, but they are looking to come in, they're looking to invest money, they're not asking for any city participation or anything, and I do think that it's going to be an improvement. I think if we were to hold strict to the form-based code, then we're going to run into a lot of situations where we're going to be sacrificing good or great things for trying to strive for perfect things. And we're not always going to get perfect things. I do think this would be a good addition to the city, and I'm going to support it even though I know that it does not meet the form-based code.
I am not going to support this project because I don't believe that it meets the intent and the goal of this city. And albeit that you've made modifications and tried to comply, I think that this amendment is simply a facade. It's not a building, it's just a facade. And that is really not the intent of what our comprehensive plan for the city intended for us to have.
Any other comments?
Do you think that should not be a car wash there at all? Is that what you're saying?
I believe that the attempt to do a car wash with telling us it was going to be an office building above, and then to come back and basically remove the office building is, to me, it feels like a bait and switch.
So, I like to say that I appreciate your efforts in trying to work with the city to fit into the form-based code, and I supported it when you first came, and I appreciated the steps that you've taken along the way with working with us, and I know that the city has spent a lot of time and hours in trying to revamp it and redesign and help you out, and sometimes it just doesn't work out, and I agree with Nick, we have that a bigger conversation to have, and I don't want something that, an improvement to be caught up in our waiting to have that bigger conversation, so I will be supporting this project, even though it's outside of the form-based code.
Yeah, I have to say it's a little concerning that with the recent Broadmoor construction plans that we've approved, and I know you voiced
I voted
a lot
against
of
those
frustration
too.
against that, but not everyone did, and
Consistent.
I had some frustrations with that as well, but I kind of came to the same realization that we don't want to let good progress go out the window because we're striving to constantly be perfect about everything with our city's vision that was set out 12 years ago. So that needs to be revisited, and I think it's become clear. I know that we've had other businesses that have looked to come to Mission that haven't because of this form-based code, and it's caused some problems, maybe more problems than it's worth at times. So I think, as a council, we've got an obligation to go and really revisit that as we move forward. Again, I don't think you can sit here and say that this project meets the form-based code. I don't know that anybody would really try to argue that, but I still think it'd be a good addition to the city as our land use attorney said it's more of a recommendation and not a strict guideline.
Call the question.
Call for the question.
I don't think that's an appropriate motion under the League of Cities.
Go ahead, Ken, wait 1 second.
The distinction between the Broadmoor project and this one is that the Broadmoor project did not involve the replacement of buildings. And that was one of the differences in terms of the changes that we made, or allowances that we made in that case. This is the removal of a building to replace it with another building that does not meet the form-based code. I also believe that it's not in the best interest of the city to vote on this in favor of it, only to remove the Valero building that you don't like. That to me is not a very good justification.
Generate business here in Mission.
Well, I think you can generate business, but I'm not certain that the discussion that
You're trying to be restricting to business.
That's your assumption though, on why we're voting. Or
Well,
why
I
it's
know,
ordinance.
I was talking about the argument that was made that at least we want to get rid of this Valero. We all want to get rid of the Valero building.
Right.
But that's not a reason for voting for a project that does not meet the form-based code.
I mean, frankly, I think that the comments were almost a little frustrating that you said that you wouldn't be looking to tear that down if we didn't move forward with this. I'm not gonna, that's not the reason I'm voting one way or another. I kind of was surprised by that, but.
Why would the man invest more money in it when he can't use it?
I agree.
Because that building is so dilapidated.
Be a responsible property owner, because he owns the building.
He's gonna
But
sell
that
it.
being said, I still think that the best solution for everybody involved is to have this project move forward and let's get some successful business going on in that space. It'll accomplish all of our goals. And yes, it doesn't meet the form-based code, but I think we've got a lot of other conversation coming up about that in the future. So.
All right, so I think everybody's had a chance to weigh in, that wants to weigh in. All right, call for the vote, please, Martha.
Thomas,
Nay.
Davis,
Nay.
Schlossmacher,
Aye.
Rothrock,
Aye.
Quinn,
Aye.
Crane,
Aye.
Inman. Aye. Flora.
Nay.
Motion carries.
All right, moving on to item 7, committee reports. Our first committee report is from Finance Administration. Ms. Flora, please.
Mayor, the Finance and Administration Committee met on July 10th and considered 13 items, including approval of the meeting minutes and discussion of the 2020 recommended budget and possible change in date for the swearing-in of newly elected officials. 7 of the action items on the committee's agenda were considered on tonight's consent agenda, and the issuance of 2019 general obligation bonds was approved at the beginning of our meeting this evening. We have 2 additional items for consideration. Our first item for consideration is the ordinance certifying Roeland Court Townhomes special assessments. The Roeland Court Townhomes CID was established at the April 2019 City Council meeting. The project is now moving to design and construction, and the next step in the CID's special assessment process is for council to pass an ordinance certifying the maximum assessments. A public hearing on this issue was held at the beginning of tonight's meeting. Following adoption of this ordinance, there is a protest period that expires on August 23rd, 2019. The maximum amounts per property are certified through this ordinance, but the assessments are not provided to the county for inclusion on the tax bill until after the project is completed and final costs can be confirmed and allocated. Mayor, I move the City Council adopt an ordinance levying special assessments on certain property to pay the cost of internal improvements in the City of Mission, Kansas, as previously authorized by Resolution Number 1020 of the city, and providing for the collection of such special assessments.
Second.
We have a motion and a second discussion on this item. Seeing none, please call for the vote.
Davis.
Aye.
Schlossmacher,
Aye.
Rothrock. Quinn,
Aye.
Flora,
Aye.
Thomas,
Aye.
Inman,
Aye.
Crane.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Next up, we have item 7B, Police Department radio replacement. The police department's current portable and mobile radios are approximately 15 years old and will no longer be supported by Motorola after this year. In 2017, the department began testing and evaluating radios from both Motorola and Harris, vendors that were selected through an invitation from Johnson County Emergency Management to allow vendors to present their P25 products. Project 25, P25, sets the standard for interoperable digital two-way wireless Additional bids were requested after the testing and evaluation period. Staff was unsuccessful in securing a complete bid for Motorola and is therefore recommending the purchase of the radios and all related equipment from Harris in an amount not to exceed $231,433.30. Mayor, I move the City Council authorize the purchase of 40 Harris XL 185P portable radios and 18 Harris XL 185M mobiles and all associated equipment for the Mission Police Department in an amount not to exceed $231,433.30.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion. Seeing none, please call for the vote.
Quinn.
Aye.
Rothrock.
Aye.
Crane.
Aye.
Inman.
Aye.
Thomas.
Aye.
Flora.
Aye.
Schlosmacher.
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
Motion carries.
And that's it for Finance and Administration.
All right, then, moving on to Community Development, Ms. Thomas.
Thank you, Mayor. The Community Development Committee also met on July 10th and discussed 8 items. These included approval of the committee minutes and discussion of the Facility Conservation Improvement Program, and speed limit and traffic signage on 51st Street east of Lamar. The committee also received an update on the amended preliminary and final development plan for Tidal Wave Auto Spa, which was considered earlier on this evening's agenda. 3 action items from the committee were approved on tonight's consent agenda, and there is one more item for consideration. That item is the BHC Road Street Assessment Asset Inventory. During the initial planning phases for the city's comprehensive street maintenance program, all streets were given a pavement condition index score, and council set a goal of maintaining all streets with a PCI score of 70 or higher. During the initial years of the street program, staff discovered that about 50% of residential streets targeted for a mill and overlay treatment could not structurally handle that treatment and would require a full depth reconstruction. In order to reevaluate and reprioritize streets within the street maintenance program, the city has worked to complete updated pavement condition ratings and geotechnical analysis. BHC Roads was hired earlier this year to begin compiling all asset information into one GIS location with the goal of building a long-term planning, budgeting, and asset management tool. BHC Roads' initial work has focused on our stormwater system, and with this task order, attention will be turned to streets to develop a new residential street maintenance program. Mayor, I move the City Council approve a task order with BHC Roads to perform services related to asset management, condition inventories, and conceptual program costs for Mission Residential Street Network in an amount not to exceed $9,000.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Discussion. Seeing none, please call for the vote.
Thomas.
Aye.
Rothrock.
Aye.
Flora.
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
Inman.
Aye.
Crane.
Aye.
Schlosmacher.
Aye.
Quinn.
Aye.
Motion carries.
That concludes my report.
All right, that concludes item number 7. Moving on to item 8, unfinished business, which we do not have any this evening. Item 9, new business. We do not have any new business. Acceptance of easements was removed earlier. So we're at item 10, comments from the City Council. This is an opportunity for council members to make any comments they would like to share. Ms. Green.
This is an announcement that the normally scheduled Ward 3 meeting will be held tomorrow evening, but it will be held at the Mission Market in lieu of the Community Center. And we encourage people to come. We're going to try and start at 6 o'clock, and we'd like you to come. You could help volunteer, you could just be there, or we'll have a brief meeting, but it'll be real informal, and we'll kind of talk about some things, setting structure for the next market and how we're doing, and I'd like some feedback on Ward 3 participation and how we can do more for the market and what it does for you. So that's one item. Second one, I had an inquiry from a neighbor about possibly looking into historic language or historic signage at the entrance of certain parts of Mission neighborhoods relative to its historic significance. And Laura, I'll follow up with you on that. You may have had someone else mention something too, so I want to make sure we're on the same page. But it's something that, this is a gentleman that's about 90 years old and he's kind of wanting to look forward to that. I told him I'd bring it up at the meeting. So
Okay.
Thank you. Ms. Thomas.
I wanted to compliment Brent and your team. 51st and Lamar is looking a lot prettier, so good work. And second thing, Councilmember Quinn and I have a Ward 1 meeting on July 24th, next Wednesday at 6:30 at the bar, so feel free to join us there.
Anybody else? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 11, Mayor's Report. I do not have one, so we're at item 12, City Administrator's Report.
And I don't have one this evening, Mayor.
All right, we do have a need for executive session, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
All in favor, say aye.
Who seconded
Deb
that?
made that motion.
Who seconded? Did you get that? Debbie. Okay.